We live? Well, welcome to episode 1 of We Haven't Figured Out What the Hell to Name It Yet. We'll work on that. That's going to be a work in progress.
Yeah, gotta brainstorm a few things.
Yeah, I think there is probably some copyright infringements that we have to be aware of.
It'll buff.
I mean, it's probably.
It'll be all right, maybe.
We are your hosts for the evening. I'm Kyler.
And I'm Tyler.
Good luck remembering that. Our parents are dicks. First off, we'll just go ahead and state this is a not safe for work podcast, so don't let your toddlers listen to this. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, probably not.
So the first thing I wanted to talk about, and we talked about it a little bit before, is this new Avenged Sevenfold song. Now, I mean, they haven't released a song in like what, 4 or 5 years.
It's been a while, man, and I was happy about it.
I was really looking for. I mean, let's be honest. I would say that most of us that listen to metal music at some point in our lives, probably jammed to the Nightmare album or Backcountry or something of that nature. And, we're probably really fond of Avenged Sevenfold and kind of, grew to love them. And they were easily one of the most popular bands of the mid-2000s, I would say. And then they kind of went dormant for a while. And, out of nowhere.
For good reason.
Yeah, well, for good reason. That's fair. Then out of nowhere, they drop this thing on YouTube and say they're going to drop a song, and it comes out today, and it's called Nobody, and I'm guessing it's probably called that because
nobody likes it.
Nobody likes it. So it's rough, man. It's rough. When I heard that, I thought it was a synth at first, and really it's like we talked about. It's like a bowstring being drawn across the guitar. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And then you hear M Shadows sound like a dying goat on there. And I didn't really know what to think about it at first. I was almost dumbfounded to the point of, this is almost a 6-minute song. I can't make it through this thing.
Yeah, I was pretty confident that when you sent it over to me that I was not going to make it through. And I hadn't even heard the song yet.
Yeah, I believe your exact words were, how the fuck am I going to make it through this whole song? And I thought that was a pretty accurate statement. And I really, really feel bad for hating on them because I did used to jam their shit back in the day. And, Sinister Gates is an extremely talented guitarist. And, Jimmy the Rev Sullivan, their drummer that died several years ago, was extremely talented too. And M Shadows used to be able to belt that shit out, but buddy, I get it. He's getting older, and dudes' voices change when they get older, but he sounds rough. Like he is struggling with every breathe through the fire. I'm like, my guy. I'm not saying I can do it better, so I'm just some dude on the internet. Don't take me for fucking the gospel, but just personal opinion here. I mean, it's rough.
So Here's where I'm at with Avenged Sevenfold.
Is this a heavy metal hot take?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. Like, I was definitely the punk skater kid, and I mean punk in every sense of the word. I was a little bitch. But also, like, I wore the Skull t-shirts, and I wore, like, a lot of black.
Yep.
And this was, like, fucking 7th grade. And
so we're talking 2006, 2005?
2006, 2007.
Yep.
And I jammed it so much.
Yeah.
But I also hung out at the warehouse a lot too.
For those who don't know, the warehouse was a local spot back in the day where all the skater kids would come out and hang out and listen to metal music and skate, and it was kind of the emo scene. It was a pretty cool joint back in the day. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so back then I was definitely listening to Avenged Sevenfold a lot, and that it was really like their first album that I would listen to. And I was able to get over dude's voice.
Yeah.
I wasn't too particular, but part of that is I'm not the greatest vocalist either.
Correct.
And thanks for agreeing.
We're slinging insults already.
But
oh shit.
But I really didn't pay too much attention to the vocalist,
Right.
and then it was dude, around that time, it was everyone had to have a Schecter guitar because of Avenged
Of Sinister
Sevenfold.
Gates. Yep.
And dude just ripped that guitar
Yeah.
every song, and I loved it.
Right.
And I could really give a shit less about the vocals at that time, but then I start listening to different types of music towards like 8th and ninth grade, getting more into grunge, getting into more vocally driven music.
Yep.
And at that point, I just couldn't do Avenged Sevenfold anymore.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because now obviously we talk music pretty much daily and go to concerts together and all that and jam together. And when you hear a song, and this I think this goes for most people that are into metal and dissect music, to the level that we do. When you hear a song, you hear it completely different than I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you listen to a lot of vocally driven bands and different genres, and so your evolution that you're talking about, going from when you're in that middle school age to, man, I just want bangers, I just want sick guitar riffs, I want gnarly bass lines, I don't give a shit about the vocals, to now it's like, man, I want to feel the breadth of the vocals and the lyrics, and it's like your musical growth journey, man. I mean,
Yeah, and another thing too that I've really paid attention to lately with what I've listened to is the your vocals are an instrument,
yes,
and different vocalists will use that instrument in a different way, just like guitarists use a guitar in different ways. You have like John Mayer will play shit one way, and then dude from Avenged Sevenfold will play go in a completely different direction with it.
right.
And so the same thing goes for vocals, and I feel like dude from Avenged Sevenfold has been singing the same song for 20 years.
Right. No, I get totally where you're coming from. And I think a lot of what drew, and a little bit of my musical background, just, I started playing guitar when I was real young, and I grew up on, thrash metal and a lot of the 80s, even the 80s hair bands. I was a big Dokken fan, Rat, Metallica, Megadeth, all those kind of things, just because that's what my dad listened to. And I get into middle school, and at the same time you're in middle school, 07, 08 roughly for me, and Asking Alexandria starts to come out, Attack Attack comes out, all these back
Crabcore.
then, exactly, crabcore. Back then it wasn't called crabcore, it was just called like screamo or emo metal or whatever it was. And man, I went through a phase where I was painting my fingernails black and doing all that shit, and I'm sitting here in a camo t-shirt with boots on, and that just wasn't, but that music had that effect on me, and that's what I was jamming to at that time. And Avenged Sevenfold kind of came on the scene and was like leaning a little more towards that hardcore style for me, and it was attractive in the sense of, like you said, Sinister Gates, he can shred, and I was kind of missing some of that with some of that crabcore, right?
Right.
Like they're not soloing, they're playing a 7, 8, 10 second string riff over and over and over, and
Yeah.
it's fun to headbang to, but it's not very, looking back, you're like, man, that wasn't very creative. It wasn't very, inventive. It was just, Stand Up and Scream. Asking Alexander's album, Stand Up and Scream, there wasn't a bad song on it at the time. It was just headbang to every fucking song on there.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't unique. And Avenged Sevenfold had some stuff, especially for me, the Nightmare album, that I thought was unique for what I had been listening to. And it's funny, as you get older and you get better at the instrument you're playing, or you just almost like you open your palette to different types of music, and you start to kind of realize, some of these bands that I was listening to, they make good music, but they're really not creative. Because let's be honest, Avenged Sevenfold is not Periphery.
No.
They're not Norma Jean. They're not some of these bands that are just completely different and, may not gain that mainstream popularity. You and I listen to some bands that, a lot of people probably have never heard of.
Right.
So, and that's okay, but it's just we have a different palette for music. So
to kind of speak on that and what I've seen in the evolution of Avenged Sevenfold and a lot of different bands is they really attracted attention with that first album being something different than what was on the scene at the time, and people really enjoyed the music for those of us that were into that kind of vibe, that heavy riffage and a little bit of screaming in there. He didn't do a
Yeah,
lot
he
of
didn't do a
it,
ton.
but you know, more aggressive vocals. I mean, he's very raspy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was very aggressive, things like that. But what most bands do, and this is what I think Avenged Sevenfold did, is they got caught in the pop trap. And
Oh,
what
I
I
agree
what I mean
100%.
by that is there is essentially pop formulas.
Okay.
Formulas to writing hit songs.
Expand on that a little bit for us.
Okay. So I can go in deeper into psychology about it, but what I know about pop culture and fans of these like pop artists and even pop rock or anything like that, popular music,
Mm-hmm.
one, they're not super educated in music, so that plays a big key in it.
Sure.
The most important thing is people don't like to be surprised. They like to be able to expect what's coming. And so when you have these pop formulas that really go along with the norm, what you would typically hear, and if you listen to a lot of Avenged Sevenfold, even from the Nightmare album,
It's
it's
verse, chorus,
it's
solo
not much
breakdown,
different
chorus.
than anything else out
Yeah.
there, and it's been the same thing since even back in the 70s, man.
Yeah.
You got bands like AC/DC that I used to love, but most of their songs sound the same. They found a song that worked and they rewrote that song 100
Yeah.
times. And a lot of these bands in the 80s,
Hair metal
honestly,
bands.
hair metal
They
bands
did.
in particular, they were all playing the same shit.
Yes.
They were all playing, you know, intro, verse, chorus, little whittly diddly, and then
Yeah, just
powerful
noodling.
chorus,
Yep.
and then that was it. And lyrically, there wasn't much complicated with the lyrics.
No, it was
You
just
didn't
all
have
about
to
getting
really
pussy.
think about it.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. People don't like to have to think about the music unless you are a true music fan
Correct.
or a student of music. And Avenged Sevenfold, they got popular. They got a taste of that popularity and they wanted to keep it going. And so they kind of took their style and moved it into this pop formula, and voila.
You know who else I think kind of did that was another band that really had my attention, and it had a lot of people's attention when they first came out because they were so aggressive and so um, listenable, was Five Finger Death Punch.
I knew you was gonna say
You
it.
did?
I knew
Yeah.
you was gonna
Yeah.
say it.
So Five Finger Death Punch, like, that was locker room music, right? When we were playing football, and that's what we played in the locker room a lot, was Five Finger Death Punch, because it was heavy. It was, you could sing along with it, scream along with it. Ivan Moody had a really powerful voice. It was something, you could vibe to, right? It would get you pumped up. It would get you in that mood to fucking kill somebody, man. So it was great locker room music, or you about to go get a lift in. And I remember I had every single CD, because back then I didn't have an aux cord or whatever in my car, so I had every Five Finger Death Punch CD in the car, and I would jam that shit. And then I get in college and I'm like, this album sounds exactly the same as the last one, and that doesn't mean that it wasn't good. It was just not. It was not expanding my musical knowledge and palette. It was repetitive, and I haven't listened to them in 8 years probably.
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't listen to Five Finger Death Punch much, just because I wasn't really listening to that type of music much until I got older. But like when they were out and they were this big thing, I knew of them more in kind of in passing conversation with with other music fans that would talk about them and stuff. But even their fans would talk about how they kind of did the same thing over and over, and they sort of sold out and got to a point where they just weren't doing anything different. And I think the real struggle for a lot of these bands is trying to keep their core or their original fan base interested while also gaining new fans, because you have to, you almost have to balance how much of that pop formula you do versus how much you challenge your audience.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of bands are kind of in that spot where, do we do something different? Because there's a lot of bands that'll try something different and almost wreck their career. And so they're like, do we just keep doing what we know is good, or do we change it up and try something new? Five Finger Death Punch fell into that. But there's also an element that a lot of people don't understand, and that's record labels, record contracts.
Mm-hmm.
So when a artist gets signed, especially in the early 2000s, they can get signed to a record deal, and in that record contract, it lays out, we fucking own you for X amount of albums.
Yep, songs. Yep.
And so the label typically fronts a certain amount of money, and they say, here's your signing bonus, $100,000 for you guys to use that money to record, use that money to, pay your expenses while you're doing your thing. I mean, 100,000, 500,000, whatever the fuck it is. And that's what they have to work with. Before the artist sees a dime from the sales of their CD or any of that, the record label has to recoup all that cost.
Mm-hmm.
So say you get a signing bonus of $100,000. The profit from every CD sale has to add up to that $100,000 before the artist sees any of it.
Yeah.
Not only that, but what's even crazier is it's the art in the record contract. It says the artist gets, say, 5%. That's real, 5% of record sales.
Yeah.
And really, it's that 5% that the record label keeps to recoup that 100,000. So think of 5% of a $10 CD.
Right.
How many CDs do you have to sell to come up with 100,000?
I'm not good at math, but a bunch.
A bunch. And so from there, it's from there, by the time they get recouped, a lot of artists don't even recoup.
Yeah.
Because that's 100,000 for this album cycle. The label's expecting another. They do it by album cycles, and album cycles could be a year, could be 2 years, and they say, hey, in 2 years you owe us another album, and you might not even be recouped yet.
Yeah.
Most artists don't recoup until about album 2 or 3.
Yeah,
before they start seeing money from their record sales.
It's funny you mentioned that. Have you ever seen Straight Outta Compton movie? About,
it's been
NWA.
A long time.
Yeah, so Straight Outta Compton has a great example in that movie of what you just said. I won't explain the whole scene, but basically, Ice Cube comes in, and I think it's Ice Cube comes in and says, hey, we made all this money, and we're good. I'm getting out of the contract or whatever, and the basically the record label reneges on the deal, and it's a shady business, man. I mean, I don't know if shady's the right term, but it's just if an artist is poorly managed or poorly informed and they're just starting out, a record label can rake them over the coals, and the artist doesn't even know what's happening.
They don't even know what's happening.
Yeah.
They really don't. And so you get these artists that sign a deal. They release their first album from what they had prior to the record contract, and from there it's that's the good music.
Right.
Album 2 might be a banger too, but it's not really super popular. I mean, most of these bands start with a very small base, more of a cult following on a small scale, and then they have to make a decision. Are we going to sell out so that we can actually get recouped on all this money the label has sent us so that we can actually start getting paid? Or are we just going to keep putting out music that we really like that the record label isn't really going to push very hard for us because we're not playing ball with what they want us to do, and basically just be living off of whatever this signing bonus is per album cycle. And then you also have the risk of the label saying, well, we're not going to keep pushing your albums.
And just for, reference and full disclosure, Tyler's not talking out of his ass here. So Tyler is the bassist and one of the vocalists for a band called Screaming Evidence. And your degree, what exactly is your degree in? I can't remember the verbiage of it again.
So it's a bachelor's in music business.
That's right, music business. So when he's speaking all this, it's not coming out of his ass. It's because he's been there, he's done that, he's recorded albums, he's studied how this works for 4 years in school, and it's well informed information that he's dishing out. So yeah, I think that a lot of these young artists that are coming up, and my like I said earlier, my TikTok is starting to do pretty well, and I've actually talked to a couple local bands. One of them is called Devil's Envy. Check them out. They're on iTunes. They are a really, really talented, young, up-and-coming band. And please check Screaming Evidence out as well. All of their songs are available on Apple Music. Are you on Spotify? Or just
we're pretty much on everything.
Everywhere. So yeah, here I'm promoting. I'm a self-proclaimed promoter. But so I've talked to some of these bands on social media, and that's one of the things that they've kind of talked to me about is what do we do as far as the record deal? Is it I think you worded it, do we sell out and try to go big or go big or go home, or do we just keep doing what we're doing and playing smaller shows and just doing it for fun because we love it? So
it gets really complicated even now, because now there's the standard is a 360 deal.
Okay, you have to explain that one to me.
So early 2000s, Napster and iTunes and all that.
Metallica sued them.
Basically flipped the music industry upside down.
Okay.
And I can go into detail as to how it really done that, but it flipped the industry upside down. Record labels were not making as much money on album sales because not as many people were buying albums. You start getting into 2010 when almost everything was streaming.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, labels started freaking out. They're like, no one's buying albums anymore. Mm-hmm. They're buying songs for 99 cents on iTunes.
iTunes gift cards.
Then streaming happened, and now nobody's buying music. Everyone's streaming it. Yep. They're like, how do we get this money?
Apple and Spotify are making, pretty much all of that money from those streaming.
They really even weren't making that much.
But, I mean, I'm talking now. Like, where you pay an Apple Music subscription, I'd love to see the breakdown for that. But I digress. Get back to this. I'm getting off track. Get back to this 360.
I can go in on it, but it's so all this happened, and then labels started saying, "All right, so what we need to do is we need to find other sources of revenue." And so they looked at their artists, newer artists, and they said, "Look, you make money off of touring. We currently don't take a piece of that, but the only reason you're making money on touring is because we put money in to back you. We marketed you. We got you in the studio. We're promoting your music so people listen to it, so people want to come to your shows. We want a piece of that money." They said, "You also make money on merch."
I knew that was next. Or that was my next
question. You only make money on merch because we market
promote it,
you, we got you in the studio, we made this happen for you. And it goes down to like your publishing, copyrights and stuff. Traditionally, record labels only owned the mechanical royalties on your music. So when it was sold on a CD or something, they got a piece of it, but they really didn't get a piece of the songwriting royalties. And so they started trying to dig into that a little bit. Not as successful on that realm. But it goes all the way to if you are a popular artist and you start making movies, record label gets a piece of that.
Jesus.
And
so, I mean, it's essentially, when you say 360,
it's everything.
it's everything.
We get a piece of everything that you make
if your
from
name
here
is,
on out
so,
because we made you famous.
If Ronnie Radke from Falling in Reverse is on a 360 deal, I'm not saying he is, I don't know, but I know they're signed to a record label. If Ronnie Radke from Falling in Reverse is on a 360 deal, they get a profit off of anything and everything he does, even down to, let's say, his TikTok revenue, because he's got a pretty big following on TikTok.
If it's included in the agreement, then yes.
Jesus. So I mean, they own you.
They got you
They
by
own
the
your
balls.
Just like in you won't get this reference, but just like in college football where they have name, image, and likeness, where they are making money off of anything that has that artist's name, image, and likeness on it.
Yep.
T-shirts,
Yep.
albums, streaming,
All of it.
concerts, all of it. Wow. Yeah, so and it's easy to understand why so many artists are reluctant to get involved in that.
So what's interesting is the big push on staying as an independent artist. And
a lot of country artists do that.
It's really big in country right now.
Yeah, it's really big in country music.
And alternative music is the same, where
Tosh Sultana, I believe, is independent. Is she not? Or am I wrong on that?
I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it.
Not sure,
but it's understanding that when you are signed to a label, the only way for you to succeed is on a massive scale. Because if it's not a massive scale, you're not getting out from under the debt with the label. You're not really making any money because you're not getting anything from album sales or anything like that. They own your, a chunk of your touring revenue all the way down to the merch, your royalties, all this stuff. And so you have to succeed on a huge scale. You have to be a top 10 artist.
You have to be selling out stadiums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you do that, yeah, those artists end up making a fuckload of money.
Yeah.
But for every one of those artists that you see, there's about another 15 that you don't see. A label will sign 10, 15 artists hoping that one of them hits.
Yeah.
And from there, you look at independent artists. You can succeed on such a small level.
Yeah.
There are so many different ways for artists to make money. You don't even have to really leave your state, depending on what state you're in.
I have a great example of that, and it's country music. And I don't know if you've ever heard of him or not, but his name's Ryan Upchurch.
Heard of him, yeah.
Yeah. So Ryan Upchurch is independent and is very strongly opposed to record labels, to having his music played on country radio, to being owned by anybody other than Ryan fucking Upchurch.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. And so he's different. When he first got started, he was like rap country, right? And it was odd. It wasn't my thing, but I respected the hell out of the game, right? I respected the shit out of this dude is doing it on his own. He's from fucking Cheatham County, Tennessee, and
a bunch of labels came for him, trying to get him to sign when he finally started getting things rolling.
Yes,
and he basically flipped the bird.
He told them to fuck off. So not only that, but Ryan has gotten to the level where he is so well respected in the country music industry that he has gotten other artists. There's another artist named Chase Matthew that he got started up. He's really good friends with Jelly Roll. Do you know Jelly Roll?
I'm familiar with Jelly Roll.
Yeah, so he has gotten this span of influence where he is helping these guys. Now, I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that him and Chase Matthew got into a beef because he gets Chase started up and gets him going, and then Chase goes and signs a fucking record deal.
I don't know that story.
But what I'm saying is Ryan, he's never left fucking Cheatham County, Tennessee. He's a multimillionaire driving a fucking Lamborghini living in Cheatham County, Tennessee. All
he
done
does tour
independently.
and stuff,
He
but
does.
yeah, it's definitely
And
independent.
he plays big shows.
Oh yeah.
Like he's very popular. And he's got, I don't even want to call it a cult following because if you listen to country music, you probably know who Ryan Upchurch. You don't even listen to country music, you know who Ryan Upchurch is.
I know who he is because I wasn't a huge fan of the hip hop
That's
movement.
What it is, yeah.
I kind of made a lot of fun of it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I couldn't deny is that dude's story was fantastic.
Did you know that he just recently did a cover of Nutshell?
I'll check it out. I'll check it out. I'll cry.
Incredible.
I'll cry.
It's incredible.
It's fine.
So,
but
I just wanted to throw that out to you that he did do a cover of probably, and I'm putting this on the record, the greatest song ever written. Nutshell, Alice in Chains. Book it. Take it to fucking Vegas. I don't give a shit if it's divorce. If you call it divorced dad rock, that is the greatest song ever written.
I'm a divorced dad, and I support this message.
Absolutely.
But yeah, hearing his story, and there was a rapper, I can't remember his name. What he did that thrift store shopping song.
Macklemore.
Yeah, so both of those guys started independent, and they made something of themselves. Now, I can't really say either of them did it entirely on their own.
Right.
The idea of
without a record company.
Right. So an indie artist is basically someone who is doing music without a record label. Now, there's a lot of other positions out there. You have a publicist, you have a tour manager, you have a booking agent, you have PR rep, you have a merchandiser, you have a distributor. Even without a record label, you still need a distributor to get your shit out there.
Yep.
Like, there's still a lot of these components, but what he did is he just said, fuck you, record label, I'm going to figure all this shit out on my own.
I'm hiring and firing everybody
yes.
that's coming into my circle.
And you also have probably the most important position in the music industry right now, but often not talked about and probably not appreciated enough, is an artist manager.
Okay.
And so an artist manager is basically a guy that can take an artist and say, I'm going to handle your entire business.
Do you mean like probably the most well-known one would be, for me at least, was Bob Rock with Metallica? Is that what you're talking to? The guy he's in the studio with them, helping them produce albums and mix albums. He is booking their tours. He's in charge of all that. Is that what you're referring to? Just
pretty much.
Yeah.
So an artist manager is that guy that he's kind of your liaison between you and all the other team members.
Okay.
So if you look at, say you're in a circle, in the center of the circle is the artist.
Okay.
And then on the outside you have your record label, distributor, merchandiser, publicist, PR rep, all these different components. The manager is in the center of that circle with the artist saying, you don't have to fuck with any of this. You focus on the music. I'll focus on the business.
Gotcha.
And then I'll do that for 10%.
Phenomenal fee.
10% of everything,
Yep.
or 15% of everything, depending on how much clout they have.
Gotcha.
And so it's really a very important person to have
And
if
that's
you have
what
a good
you
manager.
do for Screaming Evidence.
That's what I did try to do.
Yeah.
I haven't done much
Right.
Over the last couple of years.
Sure.
But
meanwhile, you've dropped an
that's
entire
what
double album.
that's what. So when I got into school, my initial intention was that of just about any music fan is I want to have my own label. I want to start a label. I want to help artists. I want to do this. And the more I learn, the more I realize that record labels are definitely it's fine. Record labels are definitely a dying business model, and they're kind of the fucking devil.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I just and you understand it from a completely different perspective than I do. Obviously, I'm just a music fan, right? I mean, I'm just some dude that plays guitar in his bedroom and comes to the garage to jam. So, but my whole thing is, I think that people have been taking advantage of artists for 80 years. I mean, I could go back
Longer than that, man.
yeah, man. I mean, you could go back to the 30s. Or the 20s when that big booming jazz music came along. Did I get that right? Does that sound right?
It sounded
Yeah.
legit.
So I mean, I think that artists have been a little smarter as of late than they have been. And I guess it only took 80, 90 years to learn, but
Well, it's like with everything, information is more available now.
yeah. Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it's instant. If you want an answer to something, it's right there.
Google it.
Google it. If you want to see boobs, Google it.
Make sure Save Search is off.
We went, make sure that shit's turned off. So we went from, and God, just to keep everybody out of their feelings, we weren't trying to bash Avenged Sevenfold.
I was definitely bashing them, but I have no room to talk.
We were definitely bashing Avenged Sevenfold. I think it might be time to hang it up. I'm just, and you know what? Slipknot too, bro. Like, I don't know if they probably should have stopped after the Gray Chapter, because the last two albums have not been very good, and it breaks my fucking heart because Slipknot is the best new metal band of all time. I don't give a shit about Korn. I don't give a shit about System of a Down. Tyler's going to disagree with me here. But Slipknot, in my humble opinion, is the best new metal band of all time.
So
But they need to change it up or hang it up.
we aren't even going to go there.
No,
we won't even go there because I could go on about that.
Yeah. So I do want to know. Well, let's talk about this. So we went to a concert recently, didn't we? Mm-hmm. So we went and saw a few bands down in Newport, Kentucky.
We saw the almighty Norma Jean.
We did. And along with them was Fire from the Gods and Greyhaven. And I got to say, man, I mean, I love smaller venues, for one.
Mm-hmm.
And the Newport in Columbus is one of my favorite venues. I've seen All the Remains there. I've seen Asking Alexandria there. I've seen Miss May I, Fit for a King, August Burns Red, Crystal Lake. I've seen so many bands up there. So, and the venue that we went in Newport, Kentucky, not called the Newport, but in Newport, Kentucky, was very similar to the Newport in Columbus. Those smaller, intimate venues just make everything feel so much more raw. And when you are seeing the almighty Norma Jean, the rawest, most authentic, fucking in-your-face, hardcore, we don't give a fuck band. These dudes are in their fucking 40s, aren't they?
They're getting up there.
And they put on a hell of a show. I mean, I always like Norma Jean. The what's the latest album? All Hail. So I love the All Hail album, and some of their older stuff for me was a little too raw. Meaning, I mean, Tyler, my favorite band is Polaris. I love Polaris era. Make Them Suffer, Monuments. Those bands that are super crisp. Their mixes are always great. Their production's great. Everything is so punchy and clear. And Norma Jean was like almost the opposite of that. Not that it sounds fuzzy or shitty. It's just raw. It sounds like you're listening to them playing in a fucking garage. But it goes hard as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we heard them live, it's like it's like a out of body experience, man. I mean, when they played "Surrender Your Sons," I was contemplating punching dudes in the face in the pit. I mean, it just.
So, I really love talking about Norma Jean because for me, I really didn't start getting into like metalcore and stuff until I started hanging out with like Preston,
Mm-hmm.
and then through him started hanging out with you and all you guys. But Prior to that, about the only metalcore I had listened to was some like of Mice and Men, but I didn't even get into them until I was like 23.
Yeah.
You know, so I really didn't start getting into that kind of music until I was older.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the first bands I discovered when I started looking for more of the heavier screaming but also singing kind of music was Norma Jean, and what I loved about them was that they were so raw.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the music that I liked, that I appreciated, that was heavier, was more along the lines of that raw sound. And part of it was being kind of closed-minded and arrogant, because I thought a lot of these other bands, it was overproduced, it was fake,
Not authentic.
you know, it wasn't organic at all. And it took me a while to get into those kind of bands, and part of it was seeing some of them live and seeing that they can actually do it live.
They can jam. Yeah.
They can jam. But you know, bands like Norma Jean that were just gritty, and they just didn't give a fuck, man. And that's what it is. It was guys that wanted to rage, didn't give a fuck if you liked them or not.
Yep.
They were going to write some bomb-ass songs, and, you know, maybe the production wasn't going to be this super polished sound, and it was clear that that's not what they really wanted.
Right, that wasn't their intention.
Right, that wasn't their intention. You know, they're up there with their 5150s and
That's right.
just letting it go.
Screaming.
But
Screaming. Tube screamers and everything.
when I started hanging out with you and Preston more, and I started listening to more of your guys' music, I tried to get you guys into Norma Jean once, and I failed. And I failed miserably, and part of it was I didn't show you guys the right stuff first.
I don't even remember what the very first one you showed me, but I do know what you showed me that got me into him, and it was the Anti-Mother album.
Yeah, so I don't remember what I shared with you guys first. So that you all know, we have a group chat, the three of us, and we just share music in it. All day, every day. And I would share these Norma Jean songs and some of these other like hardcore raw sounding bands that I'm not even going to get into, but these guys would just completely shoot it down. And we were sitting in my kitchen one day, and I had my JBL speaker hooked up, and Kyler was over, and I played
Viper, Snakes, and Actors.
I played that, and I was like, bro, listen to this. And so I played it, and it was through the speakers, so it was nice and loud, and the riff got the head bobbing.
I think it got me a little more than bobbing. But
And
I was bouncing.
When dude started screaming, I seen the stink face.
every fucking metal fan knows the stank face.
If you don't know the stink face, turn the podcast off.
Turn the podcast off. But he that's the thing is in this friend group, you know, the three of us, we always tried to challenge each other's ideals on what they like, right? And that's it. I feel like you're not metal buddies if you're not doing that. And just like Tyler had mentioned, where our other buddy Preston and myself were, you know, trying to get him into Polaris and Era and Periphery or whatever metalcore band it might be, you know, just kind of challenging his ideals, where he'd been in this swing of, you know, he's a big Thrice fan and listening to bands like that and Norma Jean, and really, you know, still loving grunge music and things like that. You know, we wanted to challenge his ideals, and he did this.
I was very much more into hard rock than I was in metal.
Yeah, and we were quite the opposite. You know?
Yeah.
And now it's like, wow, we all listen to everything.
Yep.
So I think it's a much better world that we all listen to everything, because we can just send shit. We do. I mean, we send shit in the group chat all day long, and today the group chat was popping.
Oh, it was popping, dude.
We had some.
I listened to that song you sent 3 times in a row.
So for just for your information, the song I sent him, which is also featured on my TikTok right now, is "Contraband" by Make Them Suffer, featuring Courtney LaPlante from Spirit Box, and it is an absolute violent song. It is violent. And when
if you're
I
not ready to murder someone, don't turn it on.
No, he texted back in the chat and said, "That's exactly what I needed today. Some fucking violence. That is metal as fuck." So, but this show, man, this Norma Jean show, and let's be honest, the openers were really good. I thought Greyhaven was better than Fire from the Gods.
Mhm.
I really like Fire from the Gods. Just listen to them on my phone, but I felt like, and I'm not bashing him at all because I talked to him after the show. He's a great guy. Their vocalist struggles a little bit with some of his stuff live,
Oh yeah.
and that's okay.
He definitely struggled with screaming.
Yeah.
And to speak on that for a moment, a lot of people think that screaming is just nonsense and that it takes no talent and that it's just
So far from
yelling
true.
in the microphone. And you have to shape your throat and your vocal cords and your fucking mouth a certain way and then project from your chest.
Yep.
Which is also really difficult for a lot of people to do. I mean, if you listen to anybody sing nowadays, most people are singing through their fucking nose.
Yep.
And you have to project through your chest. And what's crazy about it is a true scream, like you hear in metalcore and hardcore and a lot of this stuff, it's not very loud.
No, it's not. It's not. And a lot of people, there's some bands out there that fucking whisper scream on albums.
Crossfade.
Godsmack.
Oh God.
Hey,
But
easy.
hey.
But yeah, I think that screaming is an art, and I'm probably just like anybody else that fucking practices in their car, right? I mean, I think we all probably have done that at some point.
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's you and I have been friends for several years now, and I remember when we first started hanging out and jamming together, you straight up told me like, man, I am not very good at screaming. And your evolution, of learning and kind of teaching yourself and coaching your body on how to scream, and then on the last record that you guys dropped where you have a ton of screams in it,
Mm-hmm.
is hella impressive just how much you've grown. And then obviously I've watched you guys play live and just the way that you're able to, teach that muscle memory and put that into a live show is impressive. And it just comes with honing your craft.
Yeah, so I mean, it was out of necessity. It got to a point where we started writing more and more songs with screaming in it, getting heavier, and
Which I love and I lobbied for.
It's been fantastic,
Mm.
but it got to a point where Sean, him singing at such high pitches as he does, he can't scream as much as these songs demand and do the singing at the same time. And so as we've developed in our writing style and gotten heavier and stuff, it basically got to a point where Sean looked at me and was like, dude, I need you to do more.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can see you're struggling.
I love you, brother. We've
So
been
I
friends
will
for a
try.
long time, and you are struggling. Yeah.
And so I will try. And so I started screaming the way that he does and the way that he originally did, which was more of picking a pitch and like contracting your throat and your vocal cords to a point where it gets really raspy,
Mm-hmm.
and just push it. So it really was like screaming into a microphone. And you can only do that for so long.
Yeah.
Like I can do that for like maybe 3 songs that we do. And past that, you're just destroying your voice, and that's why.
And you sing too, so you can't do
Right,
that. At the beginning of the show.
I can't destroy my vocals. And so Sean was running into that. He was just destroying his vocals 4 or 5 songs in, and by the time we get to the last song, dude's
He's
like
jumped.
yelping.
Yeah.
And it got to this point where when I started trying to do it, I was like, I know the way I'm doing it is wrong. And so I have to figure out how to really do it correctly. And that's when I started listening to like Of Mice and Men and stuff.
Austin Carlisle, baby.
And I never listened or watched tutorials on how to scream. I know they're out there, but I'm hard-headed, and so I would just listen to it, and I could pretty well tell when I'm hearing a vocalist sing or scream or whatever. I can figure out how he's projecting, how he's shaping his voice, and I can try to mimic it. And so I tried to base a lot of the way I started screaming off of how he screams. And it started working out. And the problem is building the muscle memory around that is incredibly difficult because that is not the way your fucking voice is supposed to project.
No. No. They're called unclean vocals for a reason.
And switching from singing to screaming in a song, especially when it's back to back, is a motherfucker.
And I think that's kind of where, I noticed AJ from Fire from the Gods struggling because he did it all, right?
He did.
He did it all. And he was really good those first 3-4 songs. And then it started to drop off. And he was pointing the microphone.
Yeah, he was
towards
just
the
yelling,
crowd.
and he was
Help
like, "You
me.
guys do it!
Help me!"
Hey, I'm struggling.
Yeah, I am struggling. So, and I am not shitting on the guy at all. Don't think that I am because
you really can't because he's like 8 feet tall.
No, he's a big dude. He would fuck me up, dude. That's a big dude. That's a large human being. Like I said, I talked to him after the show when I was up at the merch tent, and super nice guy. English fella, by the way, from Texas, which is odd. All right, so he is an English fella that's 8 feet tall from Texas. Make that make sense.
Math it out for me.
Yeah, the math isn't math in there. But anyways, super nice guy. But yes, he was definitely struggling. And Greyhaven, I thought, man, they're just different. They're so much like Norma Jean that, and I'll tell you guys straight up, I don't like listening to their records. But they put on a fucking hell of a show, and I was losing my shit. So there's a lot of bands that, it's hard for me to not enjoy a band live.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot like your music on a record, but I can almost promise you, if you put on a decent performance live and you get people going, you put on a good show, I'm going to have a good fucking time. And I'm probably going to give your music a second chance because I know how it sounded live, and I remember how it made me feel. That sounded kind of intimate, but
Well, that's the intimacy of live music, man. Yeah. And people go there to feel something.
Yeah. And I think
and a lot of people rob themselves of that experience
by holding their fucking phone up the whole
watching
time.
the concert through their fucking phone.
Yeah. I mean, I recorded a couple songs because I wanted to have that, but for the most part, there's people there, it drives me nuts, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that'll listen to this that'll say the same thing. It drives me nuts. Maybe you're one of these people, and if you are, you're fucking dumb. That sit there with their phone on fucking Facebook Live the whole fucking show.
Yeah, bro.
Why are
you're
there?
Using up all the bandwidth.
Yeah. I'm trying to watch porn in the bathroom.
Look, I'm just trying to text and check in on my fucking kids, and my kids are dying at a fucking babysitter's house, and
you're on Facebook Live.
Yeah, you're on Facebook Live.
So I've never understood that, but I mean, to each their own, I guess. But that's just not. I mean, I'm there to feel and appreciate the atmosphere that artist wants to create.
Exactly.
You are living in their space, and like Norma Jean, those dudes have been doing it for fucking 20 years or more than 20 years since the late 90s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they never quote unquote blew up.
Right.
They are not Memphis Mayfire or some of these bands that just blew the fuck up. They kept it fairly small. I mean, they still play good-sized shows, but you're never going to hear them on radio. You're not going to hear very many people go, "Oh man, I was banging some Norma Jean today." It's just not a band that a lot of people talk about, and I think that's borderline criminal because it's a band people should be talking about.
Oh yeah.
So, on that topic of live shows, what's on your list, Tyler, for like your next, man, I gotta see these motherfuckers live. That you haven't seen. You've seen a ton of bands live.
I actually haven't seen that many live. Which is something I've been trying to remedy.
Yeah.
I was really working on seeing more bands, and then COVID hit it.
Yeah.
And fucked that up.
Yep.
But a band I really want to see. Look, I almost went into a depression spell when Tosh Sultana canceled her fucking concert.
Where was she supposed to play?
So I want to say it was last year. She was supposed to play in like Newport, Kentucky or something like that. And Preston, his wife, myself, and I think Preston's sister were going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had set up tickets and stuff. And then like a week before, Sydney lets us know that for whatever reason, the show isn't happening. And I was so ready to be at that show.
Oh, yeah. That would be like going to see Stevie Ray Vaughan in the 80s, man.
And I was like, I'm going to fucking eat some edibles.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to let her melt my fucking face.
Mm-hmm.
And then it didn't happen.
Mm.
And now she's in Australia.
Yeah, she is Australian.
She is Australian.
So she's on your list.
She is 100% on my list. I have to see it live.
If is she at the top of your list, though?
Right now, she's probably at the top of my list.
Okay. So, and I think I told you this earlier. My number one right now, and it's probably, people are probably going to be like, oh, you're just a fucking bandwagon. No, I've been listening to these dudes since 2016. But Bad Omens is at the top of the list for me. I, and some bands I love that I don't think would be worth seeing live, and I thought Bad Omens would be one of them just because the type of music they play, and then I watched a live video of them. And I was like, holy fuck, I got to go see these dudes live. Noah, their front man.
Mm-hmm.
If you think his pipes are good on the record, you ought to hear him live. Because it is, he's got those real high notes, but then he's screaming too. He's doing all that. And I watched a live show, and that dude just rips, and he never stops. So I would love to see them live quickly. I don't know. I know they're on tour right now. I got to check the tour dates. And we're trying as a friend group to, like go to a show every other month at least. And
right.
And it's good for the soul. It's good for the mental health. It's good for the brotherhood. It's something we're all trying to get better at. And I encourage everybody to, go to as many live shows as you can, man. You never know how much longer these bands are going to be on the road, or, don't take that shit for granted. It's a good time, and keep your fucking phone down, man. Just enjoy the music.
Just enjoy it.
That's all I mean.
It's not even so much the music that
it's the
that you're there.
man.
It's the atmosphere. It's the vibe. It's the feeling.
It's
the feeling of community, man.
You'll talk to people that okay, so here's me. I walk up to this Norma Jean show in a camouflage sweatshirt, a pair of jeans, and boots, and I'm the only motherfucker there that looks like that. But that don't matter because I'm talking to some dude with big ass gauges in his ear and nose rings and shit. That if people saw the two of us talking, they would think it was for a fucking movie or something. We were actors. But that's the whole point. Is it don't matter it don't matter who you vote for, what you support, what you don't support, what you do for a living. You're there because you are fans of this band or this genre of music, and it's a community. And you're breaking down those walls of division and getting together to reach a commonality of these dudes fucking jam. And we're going to bang our heads together.
Yeah, and I mean, I read a very interesting book a couple years ago called Fanocracy.
Okay.
And the whole premise of this book is understanding how to get people to be a fan of whatever the fuck it is you do.
Okay.
Whether it's music or it is something that you're selling or your business or anything, how to get people to be a fan. And they really go back to a lot of these music concepts of, live music and stuff like that. And they break down what makes that such a great feeling and how to incorporate that into other things that you do. But, one of the things they talked about was just you run across someone on the street that has a band t-shirt on, and that is a band that you fucking love.
Yeah.
But it's not a band that's like super pop. It's not a fucking Nirvana shirt
It's
that you
Norma
got.
Jean.
It's not a Nirvana shirt that you got at Walmart or this person got as a
can't name
gift.
3 songs, people.
Yeah. It's not that. It's a band that someone had to get that shirt at a concert. And this is a band that you love. what feelings arise once you see that person with that shirt on? You haven't even talked to him yet. What do you feel?
Yeah, dude. Are you asking me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So every time that's ever happened to me, I'm like, dude, fuck yeah.
We're best friends.
Well, I've been jamming them since whatever. Like, I mean, I'm striking up a conversation with, and that's no bullshit. You know me. I'm not afraid to talk to anybody. But if I see somebody walking down the street that's wearing a fucking, Polaris shirt, I'm like, what's up, dude?
Yeah.
Like, that's my fucking shit. Like, and they probably think I'm full of shit, the way I, dress on a daily basis. But it's just, you already feel that sense of friendship and commonality. I said that word already, but commonality with them.
That's exactly what it is.
And the ice is broken. You could
shattered.
You were instantly.
You broke through the fucking iceberg.
Yeah.
Fuck the Titanic.
Fuck the Titanic. You are instantly.
That's kind of fucked up. A lot of people died.
It was a long time ago. I think we can make jokes about it now. It's all good.
It's not too soon. Okay.
Was 9/11 long enough ago that we can make jokes about it? 22 years. But anyways,
I don't know.
So you have already created almost a relationship.
It's a
with
bond,
them.
Man.
And that sounds. I mean, there's people that might listen to this which if you're not into fucking metal music and hard rock music, you shouldn't be listening to this anyways. But there's people that might listen to this and be like, man, that's cheesy as fuck. No, it's really not. If you think that, then you've never experienced that. It's just and I'll put it in terms of a sports team, bro. If you're walking down the street and somebody else is wearing an Ohio State sweatshirt, you're like, hey, go Bucks. That's the first words out of your mouth.
Yeah.
It's no different with music. But I think it's stronger with music because especially with certain bands like Norma Jean or Make Them Suffer, maybe some bands that aren't widely known that, like you said, they fucking got that t-shirt from either the band's personal website or a concert. Mm-hmm. They didn't get their fucking shirt at Walmart or a thrift store.
You're definitely not going to find a Norma Jean shirt at Target.
No. We got one, though. Because we went to the goddamn show.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. But they're real because they got that shirt on. They listen to that band. I listen to that band. I love that band. Him and I, or her and I, have common ground that we can talk about. And I've been the person that's wearing the shirt that someone has came up to me and said, "Fuck yeah, dude."
It's
cool
being that person, it's super fucking cool.
You're like, damn, somebody else knows these motherfuckers.
Look,
and it sounds like you're shitting on the band, but you're not. Yeah, go ahead.
My tattoos, just like that. The one tattoo I thought nobody would understand or notice.
The lead guitarist from Greyhaven was like, "Bro, is that?"
Yeah. Well, it's
Tyler
this
has
tattoo.
A music sleeve.
Yeah, so I have a sleeve. It's just a bunch of album covers, a collage, if you will, and one of them is.
I just have deer and feathers tattooed on my arm.
Yeah. And so one of these tattoos is from a band called Brand New. And their album, The Devil and God Rage Inside Me, or something like that. And I'm terrible with names,
yes,
but I'm god awful. But this is the one tattoo I never really thought anyone would really recognize, and that is the one tattoo that I have had a dozen people, maybe not a dozen, but I've had several people be like, "Whoa, is that Brand New?" All of a sudden, my whole demeanor changes. All of a sudden, this is my best fucking friend that I haven't seen in 10 years, and we're catching up, and we're talking about Brand New and how awesome they are and all this shit. And it's the same thing. It's just this sense of, like you said, commonality and community and creating bonds with strangers, and I think that's something that doesn't happen enough.
I mean, we're sitting here doing a podcast because of music.
Yes.
Right? I mean, obviously because of our friendship, but, bro, our friendship pretty much stems from music, does it not?
That and golf.
That and golf. But we love golf. Speaking of which, it's almost that fucking
It's
time,
almost
dude.
that time.
It's almost time for a cig to the face and teeing off at Buckeye Hills. And losing 85 balls. But, I mean, that's the thing is, Tyler and I have created a lifelong friendship 90% based off of music.
Yeah.
And that's what that kind of shit can do for you. So, I've met
Go
people,
to a fucking show.
Go to a show. I don't give a shit who it is. I've been to all different. I mean, I've seen Korn, Rob Zombie, in this moment, all that remains. I mean, I've been to Rock on the Range, so you see 50 different bands there, but I've been to so many different types of rock and or metal music, and each show you're going to meet different people, right? You're going to interact with people that appreciate and interpret music differently. And I personally love like just bouncing shit off of other people's heads. Like, hey, how do you feel about this? What does this make you feel? Did you like so and so's last album? Just different things like that where you're able to strike up random conversations and kind of.
We like hot takes.
Yeah, we love hot, man. You got me. New segment on the pod. It is time for that metal hot take.
Oh God, hit me with it,
Tyler. Oh, you want me to go first?
Hit me with a hot take. What are we going to talk about?
All right, you're going to hate me. I know you're going to hate me. All right, my metal hot take. Nirvana is easily the most overrated band of the last 30 years. And my reasoning for that is because in my mind, they wrote the same song over and over and over again. They played the same 3 fucking chords in every song over and over and over again. The best part of that band was Dave Grohl. The only song that I kind of like is Come As You Are. Like, I just don't. In Bloom's okay, but to me, they're not grunge. Alice in Chains is grunge. That is grunge music. That is what I consider real grunge. Nirvana to me was just rock music. They were just hard rock music.
I'll start by saying
I'm an idiot.
I knew as soon as you said, "Hey, bro, let's do a podcast," we were eventually going to talk about Nirvana.
Yeah,
I knew he was.
Well. Yeah,
and so,
go ahead.
Look, Nirvana's not something I listen to all the time.
Yeah,
but what a lot of people don't understand about Nirvana is it was never meant to be grunge.
Okay.
That was never Kurt Cobain's ideal. Okay. Kurt Cobain grew up listening to pop music of his time. He was a huge fan of the Beatles.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't he a big Prince fan too?
I mean,
or am I
who's
off
not?
base on the? That's true. That's true. That was.
But
yeah.
Here's the thing: he grew up with that kind of musical influence of these pop musical artists. And if you listen to the Beatles, look, no one's going to deny the Beatles was one of the biggest bands that ever existed.
Mm-hmm.
But you listen to their music, and it was pretty simple. Like, there wasn't a ton of complexity to it. And
yeah, they weren't like the Who in the
right.
60s.
They weren't like the Who or the Rolling Stones or anything like that. They were writing more simplistic music that was more enjoyable to the masses. And I have to admit, there's like a lot of there's a lot more pop influence on me than I really let on.
Mm-hmm.
And so Kurt Cobain grew up with that, gets more into his like young adulthood, and he's in this Seattle scene. And at that time, what was really popular? What was growing in popularity, I should say.
And are we talking the late 80s?
Yeah.
Are you talking musically or are you talking culturally? Musically.
And culturally, yeah.
Well, I mean, in the late 80s, early 90s, you had Guns N' Roses, Pantera, musically. I mean, people were getting on a lot heavier drugs back then.
Yep.
I mean, to be really honest, there was a lot more suicide. At the time, suicide was getting kind of out of hand at that point. I'm not using that as an omen to what happened to Kurt Cobain, but things were just kind of, school shootings. I don't want to. It was just getting darker. Like America, I feel like in general, and Seattle especially was just.
Well, it's a dark place anyway.
It is. It's raining all
the time.
But
punk.
Okay.
Punk was.
So I was completely fucking off on
He
all
was
my
completely
points.
off.
Yeah, all right. I didn't know where you were going.
I mean,
but
those are good points
Yeah.
too. But punk was really starting to become this popular thing, late '80s, early '90s, and that's what like Kurt Cobain was a huge fan of. He was a huge fan of punk music, and there was a particular band in the Seattle area that he would hang around with that with like certain books I've read and stuff of that era, these guys are really only known through the people that were in that vicinity and were kind of known as the somewhat godfathers of grunge. I don't know the name of the band. Anyone that actually does know it can let me know what it is. But again, I'm terrible with names. But Kurt Cobain, when he was writing music, was writing on the influence that he had, which was pop music of his early days, his adolescence, and he was a big fan of punk, and that's why his fucking music sounds like gibberish.
It wasn't the Pixies, was it?
No,
And
no,
it wasn't the Sex Pistols.
no. Those are all like punk, like true punk bands, and I think most of them came out of New York. But um, with all that, that's why his music sounds like gibberish. It was meant to be pop punk. He was like the OG pop punk.
So, and
The only reason people labeled them as grunge is because they dress like all the grunge dudes, because in fucking the state of Washington, it's cold, everybody's poor, everyone's wearing fucking flannels.
Yep. And everybody's depressed.
Everybody's depressed, and they came up at the same time as, Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains and Soundgarden and all those bands that came out of that Seattle scene.
Stone Temple Pilots.
Stone Temple.
I don't know if they were Seattle.
I don't know if they were either. But it was guilty by association is what it was.
I think that was one of Kurt Cobain's problems, right?
It was
like a disassociation thing. Like, people are labeling me and Nirvana something we're not.
So that was a component of it. He also hated his fame.
Oh, 100%.
Absolutely hated his fame.
Do you believe that he actually killed himself, or do you believe that Courtney Love had something to do with it? I'm not trying to get into conspiracy theories, but I'm just curious.
So, to not get into conspiracy theories, but also dabble in it, I don't know that he killed himself. I mean, to say that you killed yourself with a shotgun after taking enough fucking heroin to kill a horse seems a little far-fetched. However, the dude was on a lot of heroin. Maybe he had a little more tolerance to it than we understand.
Sure.
And I also have a friend that put a fucking shotgun in his mouth and blew the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think?
Actually,
yeah, unfortunately. But one way or another, I don't think he was fucking happy with being alive. So. I mean, he was extremely depressed.
He had attempted in Rome on tour before that.
Yeah,
where he had attempted an OD, or at least that's what Courtney Love said. She said that was an actual suicide attempt. But again, I don't want to get too much into that. But I just want to preface this by saying I am not trying to shit on Nirvana. I respect the shit out of what they did. I respect the shit out of Kurt Cobain and Dave Grohl, and they were incredibly popular, incredibly successful. Unfortunately, I think that was Kurt Cobain's downfall, but it's just not. And this is all just personal opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's a hot take.
Hot take.
I don't have a single Nirvana song downloaded on my phone. I don't listen to them whatsoever. If a song comes on in your car or something, I'm not going to skip it. I'll listen to it, but I don't go out of my way to listen to Nirvana because it's just not my cup of tea. Grunge in general really isn't, except for Alice in Chains. I do like Pearl Jam, but Alice in Chains to me was just so much different.
So the other thing about Nirvana is one of the things I loved about them was at the time they became popular, a vocalist, a lead vocalist, playing guitar while singing was not very common.
Sure.
And Nirvana
Especially
was
coming out of the
always,
80s.
Nirvana was a fucking three-piece.
Mm-hmm.
You look at what Screaming Evidence was at one time, we were a three-piece.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how hard it is to do anything complicated musically when you have one guitar played by a dude who's also the lead vocalist and a bass player and a drummer?
That's why he didn't play anything complicated.
That's why he couldn't. It's extremely
But
difficult.
can I argue this with you, though?
There are people that do
James
play.
Hetfield and Dave Mustaine did.
Yeah. Yeah, they did.
They shredded.
They let it rip.
I
I
mean,
can't deny that. But I mean,
they had another guitarist who, if they fucked up a couple bars,
yeah.
they had somebody to cover for 'em.
But it's like this. Sean can sing and play things that I cannot fucking fathom doing.
Correct. I couldn't sing fucking Mary Had a Little Lamb and play along to it, dude. So I am not shitting on anybody that can do it, because it is
So
the whole ability of being able to sing and play guitar to me is mesmerizing. It always has been. I am so fascinated by it, because you are doing two completely different things. Your hands are doing something on their own while your mouth is doing something completely different, and they're not going together.
you know what's even harder? Playing bass, if you're picking with your fingers,
Like you do.
like I do, and trying to sing.
Yeah, that would be.
And the reason it's harder is because oftentimes the rhythm you're playing on the guitar is roughly the same rhythm that you're singing. In most songs where
At least in tempo.
the vocalist is singing and playing, the rhythm is roughly the same or similar enough to where it meshes well.
Mm-hmm.
With the bass, particularly the type of shit that I write on the bass, it's more groove based. So rhythmically I'm kind of playing something a little bit different than, what the guitar's playing or what vocals are going on, what Scotty's doing on the drums. And I'm picking out the groove of the song, and I'm carrying the groove.
Mm-hmm.
But the fucking vocals don't go along with the groove a lot of the time. And so not only am I using all of my fucking appendages here, I'm strumming the strings with my right hand. I'm doing weird shit with my left hand, playing all these different notes, because I hate just writing one damn note, because that's the lamest shit you can do as a bass player. And I'm also trying to sing.
Mm-hmm. Or scream.
Like
Yep.
Lovecraft, our song Lovecraft.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you know how long it took me to be able to scream that part on top of the bass line I wrote?
Well, are you talking about that fucking gnarly ass bass line that, like, you wrote it and then had to practice it for like 2 weeks to get it right? Is that the one you're talking about? Because I remember sitting in the garage while you were like trying to nail that riff down.
I don't
that the
know
one
if
I'm
that
thinking of?
I don't know that that's the one.
I
So
thought it was Lovecraft. It might
in
be Machine Gun.
Lovecraft, it breaks into it comes out of the verses and goes into a heavier part, and I wrote what I play not realizing that Sean was going to ask me to scream something.
Uh-huh. You put
And
the cart before the
so
horse, bud.
what the guitarists are doing is kind of a pretty gnarly rhythm, and I decided I was going to go along with that and do it in my own way on the bass to complement what they were doing. And the riff itself was kind of tough. And then Sean was like, "Hey, I want you to scream this." And I was like, "Sean, what do you mean?"
Did you hear that fucking bass line that I just
Like,
played?
do you see what I'm playing? He's like, "Well, you can just do less on the bass." And I was like,
How fucking dare you, Sean?
"The fuck did you just say to me?"
Are you squandering my creativity?
So I have so much a harder time singing and playing the bass than I ever did singing and playing the guitar. But the guys who have it the worst are these crazy sumbitches that'll play drums and sing.
Yeah, I mean, Phil Collins.
It's retarded.
You know, there's not too many of them. I mean, Tommy Lee does some with Motley Crue, but
Yeah,
you know,
I'm not overly impressed with that.
that's fair. That's fair. He just gets a lot of bitches. It's all
Yeah, I
good.
mean,
But
he's got a big wiener.
he posts it online a lot for all of us to see. So
Yeah.
I am one of those millions of individuals who has seen Tommy Lee's pecker more times than I care to mention. So rough follow on Twitter. Rough follow on Twitter. So that's my heavy metal hot take. And again, I'm not shitting on Nirvana. These are hot takes only. All right,
Personal
Tyler,
opinions.
Personal opinions. Tyler, what's your heavy metal hot take for this? You've had time to think about this.
I really
You
wasn't
need to
expecting.
challenge me here.
I really wasn't expecting you to hit me with
The
a hot
Nirvana
take.
one,
All right,
yeah.
so a hot take. Here's something I feel like we may have talked about before, but I can't remember. I know I've talked to Preston about it because we bitch about it, and I don't know how involved you were in the conversation, but how do you feel about metalcore now?
God, this is such a tough topic, and it's one that I've covered. I've gone to war with people on my TikTok over, and it's almost like metalcore has split into at least two different subgenres, right? So
Okay.
you have bands like Bad Omens and A Day to Remember, Beartooth, um, Sleeping with Sirens, if you can consider them in that genre.
Dayseeker.
Dayseeker, Boys of Fall. So there are bands like that are, I don't want to say vocally driven. I would almost throw Periphery in there, that I don't want to say are vocally driven, but are just not in that same vein as, when you say the word metalcore to older guys that are, maybe our age or a little, late 20s, early 30s, they're thinking Bullet for My Valentine, As I Lay Dying, Kill Switch Engage, All That Remains. That's where they're going with metalcore, right? When somebody says metalcore now, what I consider true metalcore is the bands like Era, Polaris, Make Them Suffer, Monuments, maybe Old Architects, still As I Lay Dying, those classical bands like Kill Switch and whatnot. That's what, when I hear the word metalcore, that's what I think.
But that's because you were there in the beginning.
Yeah,
you
right.
followed the movement.
But I struggle to throw like bands like We Came as Romans, Memphis Mayfire, Miss May I, Fit for a King, Bad Omens. I mean, the list goes on and on. I struggle to throw those bands into that genre anymore. And I might get crucified for that because it's just, there's almost a, dare I say, a heaviness level that I think you have to be at to be anointed a metalcore band. That sounds really elitist. That's a term?
It does sound elitist, but at the same time, it's a legitimate argument because
people on TikTok say that I'm a boomercore fan. So,
wow,
yeah, boomercore. That's a term I hadn't heard before. And I'm a gatekeeper of metal because I have a personal opinion. So and being the metalcore, boomercore gatekeeper that I am, I don't consider a lot of these newer bands metalcore. I don't know what to call them, but they're not. Dayseeker is not metalcore. That is not metalcore.
Right.
I don't know. It's good. I love it. We love Boys of Fall. Mm-hmm. That's not metalcore.
No. It's
like,
often labeled as metalcore, but
popcore.
Maybe we started a new thing.
Maybe it's popcore.
So
popcorn.
We've come to this dilemma dozens of times in music over the last 30, 50 years, however much you want to say. And it's a situation where things start in this particular fashion, in this particular vibe or sound or whatever the hell you want to call it, and then other bands kind of come in and they're similar enough to it to kind of be labeled in the same genre, and then more bands come that are maybe similar to that second artist that came in, and then so on and so forth. And then it becomes, oh, well, we're not that. We're a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get into this dilemma where we start creating new genres, new names, and if you had to sit here and list every official, I guess you can say,
Subgenre.
genre of music,
You're all fucking
we'd
right.
be here until fucking Sunday morning
Mm-hmm.
trying to label them all.
Yep. And I think it's stupid.
I think it's
Personally.
stupid too. It's like, hey, you got rock, you got metal, you got, whatever it is. I think having some level of subgenre helps because, metal could be fucking Metallica or it could be Korn.
They're completely different.
Completely different. Not even in the same ballpark.
No.
But how far do we take it with creating subgenres?
So a perfect example of that is, let's say you take a band like Bleed From Within or Currents, that some might say, man, they're almost deathcore. I don't think so. I don't think they're deathcore.
Hey,
I know OG deathcore.
That Bleed From Within album was
Bleed From Within
fire.
album was fucking disgusting. Sovereign makes me want to cut people's heads off. FBI, if you're listening, that's just a metaphor. I don't actually mean that. But
it's not a metaphor.
But so
take him away.
You've got bands like that are After the Burial's another great example. You got bands like that some might consider deathcore. I don't consider them deathcore. I consider them still in that metalcore genre, but they're still completely different from era in the sense of, they don't have a ton of clean vocals, if any clean vocals at all. So, where do you draw that line, I guess? And I agree with you, Tyler, in the sense of, I agree with subgenres to an extent, but I think that it gets to a point where it's fucking ridiculous, and you get these people on social media that are the fucking metal police that want to correct you at every fucking corner and say, well, they're not a real metalcore band. They're blah, 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 blah. You know what? They're fucking metal.
Yeah, there's all these metal elitists, and
I've been called one for no fucking reason, but I'm just.
I think part of it comes from a lot of these quote unquote metal elitists are musicians themselves.
Yes.
And when you are a musician that is, a fan of a particular band or genre or whatever, you start getting kind of defensive.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, think of grunge.
Okay.
And then think of post-grunge.
Okay.
How do a lot of these these OG grunge artists feel about the post-grunge subgenre?
I don't know. Let's go ask fucking.
So I've seen a few interviews where it's asked to these guys like in the late 90s and stuff when this post-grunge kind of started coming in. A lot of them fucking hated it. They're like, that's dumb.
So when you say post-grunge, are you talking like, what do you?
Post-grunge, I believe, was more like Bush and
that's what Fuel,
things like
Creed,
that.
And Dad Rock. Yeah, Dad Rock.
And so this like quote unquote post-grunge, and first it was kind of that thing where like, well, these guys are kind of grungy. Do we call them grunge? But then it was like, well, they're not similar enough to really say it's the same thing. But these guys are clearly influenced by grunge. Let's call them post-grunge.
Okay.
And that's kind of the same thing that happens now. You get these metalheads that play metal, whatever kind of metal it is they like, deathcore, metalcore, whatever it is.
Black metal.
Yeah. And the baby killing music.
Yeah.
And
Cannibal Corpse.
and then
Suicide
you show someone like that Boys a Fall and say, "Hey man, check out this new metal band I found."
Bro, they would shit
They
their
would.
pants. Listen to this song called Distance. It's going to make you fucking cry.
Yeah, and these dudes would be like, pussies.
What are you talking about? Make me fucking cry.
That ain't metal.
No, that ain't, yeah.
That's
exactly what it
That's
would
exactly
be.
it.
That
What
ain't
it
metal.
is.
And you know what? And I used to be that fucking dude. I swear to God. A man has to know his limitations, and a man has to admit when he was fucking wrong. And I used to be that dude. I thought if it wasn't the heaviest fucking shit in the world, I wouldn't listen to it. And you, my friend, are part of the reason why I'm no longer like that.
And I would say likewise, because I used to be very against anything that wasn't rock related.
Yeah.
If it wasn't related in some way to rock music, I hated it.
Yeah.
I still don't like country, but I've learned to appreciate some of it. I know a Tyler Childers song.
You're welcome.
I'll fucking play it right now, bro.
You're welcome.
It's a jam.
Mm-hmm.
And all it was is I stopped for a moment and listened to the message, and I will say it is very rare for a country song, at least pop country, to have radio country, to have any real meaning or message
Correct.
that hasn't been sang about a million times.
That's why if you ask somebody like me, like a real country fan, like I don't, which you and me were the same. We don't listen to the fucking radio. We listen to our phones. I don't know what's playing on country radio right now. I don't care. The only mainstream artist I like, and is just, brutal honesty, is Morgan Wallen. I feel like everybody likes Morgan Wallen. But, other than that, it's Tyler Childers. It's Cody Johnson, he's on the radio now, but he wasn't for 10 years. It's Sturgill Simpson and a lot of these guys that are never going to be played on the radio. Cody Jinks is another one. And it's just kind of a different vibe, and you're right. It's all about the message that, if you're singing about real life, it don't matter what genre it is. And rap, even rap. Like, I don't fucking like rap music. I don't. I don't like the fucking mumble rap. I don't like that stupid shit. I love old school hip hop. If Tupac comes on, Dre, Snoop, any of those dudes, back then rap was real. And I will, to this day, listen to 50. I love that shit. But the rap music, that's why there's a rapper you really like. What is
NF?
NF, yeah. So I dig his shit because it's real. Like, I don't care what
he doesn't cuss, so he's not filling lines with bullshit. His message is very deep and personal, and the way he shares this stuff about himself, and I might be telling a lot about myself by saying this, but I relate to a lot of what he's talking about, and he puts it into words in a way that I can't, and that right there has helped me tremendously. Just being able to take these emotions that I feel and be able to put them into words because someone else that feels the same way did it for me.
Yeah. And I think that's what, I don't care what the discipline is, what the genre is. If you relate to a song, whether that's lyrically, whether that's instrumentally, whatever it is, you're going to be a fan of that music for life. I used to be a pretty close-minded musical individual, I guess, and you've admitted to the same where, when it was just kind of me and Preston, and we were listening to the same shit in high school, so we weren't challenging each other.
Oh, yeah.
And, you come along in our friendship, and now we all challenge. We talked about it earlier, challenging each other and kind of opening our minds to a bunch of different shit. Like that night we sat in here and listened to that Tall Sultana song, and I got sent to another fucking dimension. I mean, straight up.
Look, to speak on it, man, there's a chick I listen to. Oddly enough, my ex-wife showed me this artist first. And the first couple of songs that she showed me, it was right around the time that I started realizing that I need to stop being so closed-minded to music. I need to listen to it, then make a decision on it. And
I mean, listen, he listened to that whole fucking Avenged Sevenfold song today. So
twice.
And
so this artist is Bishop Briggs. very poppy, but I swear to God, the one album I listened to could be a fucking metal album, and it would be amazing. That whole album could be made as a country album, and it would be fucking amazing. And it's got songs on it like White Flag and High Low and stuff like that. These songs, dude, if you would have shared them with me in high school, I wouldn't have even attempted to listen to it. If I were to show them to you right now, you'd probably have a very hard time getting into it. But I listened to the song, I listened to the message, and I looked at like, how much can I feel from this? That's what it is nowadays for me, man. Like, what? I don't want to just listen to music that sounds cool. I want to listen to music that makes me feel something.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that to an extent.
Stuff that sounds cool is awesome too.
Yeah, but here's my thing. A heavy ass riff makes me feel something.
Oh yeah.
So I guess in I do agree with you, because I'm not going to listen to something that doesn't speak to me in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's with a heavy ass riff, whether that's with a killer chorus, whether that's with a gnarly bass line, whatever it is, it has to speak to me. So, you know, I used to, it was almost like, and you can agree or disagree, but, you know, when we were in, you know, let's say high school or middle school, you listen to something because everybody thought it was cool, right? People thought, other metalheads thought you were cool because you listened to it. It probably, you know, you don't know what spoke to you back then, but damn, that shit's cool. Avenged Sevenfold's fucking cool.
So let me land something a little heavy on you real quick.
Okay, we're about to.
So speaking about like opening your horizons, broadening your horizons of music and everything.
Mm-hmm.
How much music out there has spoken to you? You just weren't listening.
Oh. Oh wow.
So that's a question I asked myself.
Yeah.
And then I said, I'm gonna listen to anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna actually listen to it.
And
now I'm gonna make a determination after I truly gave it a shot. Okay, I like this. Or that was dog shit.
Yeah.
Avenged Sevenfold.
And like yeah. In the fire. Okay, I'm sorry, M Shadows. God, I did it twice. But, you know, and Preston's a great example of this, where him and I are different in the sense that he will almost force himself into liking something. He'll listen to it so many times. Like, he'll send a song in the chat.
He's like, look, you just need to listen to it about 27 and a half times. On the 28th attempt,
You'll like it.
Halfway through, you're going to like
You're
it.
gonna like it. I mean, that ain't me. If I've listened to it 2 or 3 times and I can't get into it, I'm out.
Yeah,
I'm out.
I'm with you there.
He will send a song one day and be like, a new song from whoever kind of sucks. He'll send it a day later. Yeah, it's all right. I kind of get where they're coming from. He'll send it 3 days later. He's like, I fucking love it. I fucking love it.
It's growing on me.
Yeah, it's growing on me. And the only reason we're shit talking to him is because he's not here, so I can't wait till he listens to this. But he will almost force himself into submission to a song. And I'm like, bro, if you don't like it, you don't like it. You don't have to like everything.
Right.
Like, me, I'm like, I'll give it a fair shot. And I've gotten a lot better at that, because it used to be where, like, I listened to that Periphery song that he sent today because he sent it 3 times. Like, all right, God damn it, I'll listen to it. I still don't like it. But I gave it a shot. 5 years ago, I'd have never gave it a shot because I don't like Periphery.
Right.
And now, at least I give it a shot. So, look, it's growth, bro. We're growing. Look at us.
We're becoming old, man.
I will grow under any conditions.
This is how you become wise,
Yeah.
young grasshopper.
You listen to this podcast and you will become musically wise. Or stupid, one of the two. So that was a good hot take out of you, because it's the whole genre subgenre thing, fucking metal police and people calling you gatekeepers and all that, and boomer core. It is a conversation that gets very old. I am all for people having opinions, but I'm allowed to have opinions of your opinions. Does that make sense? Kinda.
Well, I mean, everyone is welcome to an opinion on anything they wish.
Correct. And there's no such thing as a wrong answer when it comes to music, in my opinion, because it is an opinion. So if you say, when I say I don't like Nirvana, I don't think they're that good, that's not a wrong answer. But when you say, actually, they're just extremely misunderstood and they were incredibly talented, and this is why, that's not a wrong answer.
It's the 6-9 dilemma.
Okay. What's a 6 and what's a 9?
Yeah, if I draw a 6 to me,
mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like a 9 to me.
Looks like a 9 to you.
Yep.
We're both right,
mm-hmm.
but I'm more right.
Yep.
Because I drew the 6.
Subjective versus objective, right? I'm more right because I drew the 6. Yeah. I don't ever want to be on the bottom. Put me on the top every time. Bro, what's some I know we've probably been recording for getting close to 2 hours here, so what is some new shit that you're jamming that you would recommend to people that they might like that they haven't listened to yet? And I'm gonna look through my phone while you answer, so I have some good ideas.
So there's a band.
It can be new or old. It can be rediscovered shit.
So there's a band that I came across a while back. It's called A Story Told.
Okay. Oh yeah, I remember you talking about that.
And I've shared them in our group chat a couple of times, but I can't say that anything they do is super complicated. It's not fucking periphery riffs.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's not vocals beyond belief.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing individually that stands out to me. But what does stand out to me is how they bring what they each have together. And so oftentimes when I'm listening to music, I listen to the song. And
yes.
I know I've talked to you guys about that a
yep.
lot. I'm not necessarily listening for that guitar part.
It's the breadth
it's
of
not
the song.
It's not the riff, it's not the screams, it's not this or that. It's the song and how well was it written, and how did certain things come together, rhythms and melodies and all these things. And with this band, A Story Told, I just kind of fell in love with the way they put together songs. And one thing I find really interesting is the vocalist isn't like this amazing vocalist. He's a good vocalist, but he's never going to be the greatest.
Sure.
But he's not trying to be. It's knowing this is my range, this is what I can do. Here's how I can create dynamics and pitch and projection and go on falsetto or full voice and all that stuff. How can I take what I can do, this particular range, and make it interesting?
Yeah, make it great. Yeah.
And I find his method and like the melodies and the harmonies he picks out to be very interesting to me. Like I feel like it captivates me in a certain way, and I don't know.
Good recommendation.
It's just something I like. And it's like I said, it's his choice. How he heard this guitar riff and he chose to sing it this way. Where did he pull that from?
It's music that makes you think. It's a band that's going to make you think.
Yeah, well, not necessarily. Like I said, it's not like anything crazy, but I think really deep into the music that I listen to. And when you have someone putting together these like two guitar parts, that aren't the same, oftentimes they're not even playing the same chord, or what it seems, not playing the same notes per se. It's not like when Screaming Evidence first started and you got two guitarists playing the same riff for the verse just to make the riff sound like a fucking wall
of sound. Yeah. Instead of having an underlying riff in there.
Right. Yep. And so, they're doing these two separate guitar parts, and then how he chooses to fit his voice in with what the guitars are doing melodically and what the drums and bass are doing rhythmically, and I don't know, for some reason it connects with me.
So say the name of that band one more time, just for everybody.
A Story Told.
Okay, there's one recommendation. I've got two for
The
you.
first
here.
song I heard from them was Check Please. I can't even say it was like an amazing song, but for some reason, just the way it was put together and the particular melodies, I was just like, I like this a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Spoke to you.
Spoke to me, and I listened.
So I've got two band recommendations for everybody. This might become a segment we do every time, and hopefully we get some feedback on this. So one of the bands that I want to recommend, and I'm going to go two different ways here as far as the spectrum of metal. The first one is one I mentioned several times, and that's a band called Make Them Suffer. They're out of Australia, I believe, and they are I said it earlier, extremely violent, hard fucking core. But they have some really unique qualities in the sense that they have this female keyboardist that does their choruses. She sings their choruses, and on their latest song called Doom Switch, she actually screams on it, and it's just they're doing all these different things. Their guitarist writes some of the most intricate and difficult riffs I've ever heard in my life, and that motherfucker shreds the entire song. It never stops. So if you want to rage and you want to hear something that makes you want to run somebody's head through a wall, Make Them Suffer is your band. Check out Doom Switch. Check out Contraband. Those are two of my favorite songs. Tyler, your favorite song by them, I believe, is Hollowed Heart.
Sounds right.
So that's a really good one by them, too. The other band I want to recommend, they've been out for a while now. They just dropped a new album last year. The band's called Until I Wake. Tyler, I know, yeah, Tyler likes these guys. So they have a good mix of really pretty vocals and harsher, screams. Their guitars, their sound is a little more on that raw side when it comes to like production and mix. They're not extremely crisp when it comes to their mix. You kind of just get this big wall of sound.
But they didn't turn the gate up too high.
No, it's very melodic. Exactly. It's very melodic. It's very easy to listen to, and they have a variety of different songs, like, songs that are going to put you in a good mood, songs that are going to make you feel bad, and then songs that are going to make you want to beat somebody the fuck up. So, my two bands to recommend for the week, Make Them Suffer, Until I Wake. Check them out. So, Tyler, do you have anything else? We've been recording for about 2 hours now, so if there's anything else you want to cover, we can hit it real quick.
Just that, time flies, man.
Yeah.
I didn't realize we've been sitting here for 2 hours.
Well, that's what happens when you're having fun, which we sit here for 2 hours all the time, but don't record a podcast. So. But
we got through a lot of good topics.
We did. I think just so you guys know, none of this shit was organized. We literally talked about this today. Said, hey, let's do a podcast. We didn't come up with any. We came up with topics as we were walking into the studio in here to record, and we came up with two topics, did them both. We covered about 15 different ones, so I think we handled it pretty good.
Yeah, I think a lot of these topics were just kind of built up.
Yeah,
and
we got some shit to say.
We seem to have a lot to say, a lot that we wanted to share, and we just kind of did it all at once.
Yeah.
I don't know that we'll fill 2 hours every time.
Probably not, but I think this was a good blender of what, we're wanting to do with this and kind of cover current events and then hot takes and live shows we've seen, new music, different things like that. And what I want to do is I do want to give a little self-plug here just for listener interaction. After we get this podcast put out, and I'll keep you guys updated through my TikTok on where we've got this posted and how you can listen. Please give me a follow at Smoke 2013, and you'll get a lot of metal music content on there as well. But I will be communicating via my TikTok account, where you can find this podcast, and if you guys want to reach out and tell us what you think, and if you have any topics you want us to cover or things you want to hear about, please let us know, and we'll get it covered. So appreciate you guys for listening, and also, if you have any name recommendations for the podcast, shoot them over to my TikTok too, at Smoke 2013. and we'll take into consideration some names because we haven't quite come up with one for this pod yet. Right now, it's just we got some shit to say, I guess. So appreciate you guys.
Say
listening.
it with your chest.
Say it with your chest. Appreciate you guys listening, and we will catch you next time. We out. Holla.